This isn't a place for technicians, Kessler. We train killers, not calculators. That was the last thing they told her, as they handed over her dismissal papers. Mara didn't argue. She folded the paper once, placed it in her pocket, and walked in silence. But instead of leaving the base, she walked to the range. She fired a single shot and rewrote every rule they thought they knew. Beneath her scope, they found 6 kill marks, 1 crossed out. And below them, etched in cold, worn steel, just one line. Directive Typhon, target S-13 neutralized, 0620 HRS. A name tied to a mission that never officially existed. Now the question is, who is Mara Kessler? And why did a Black Ops colonel arrive 15 minutes later? Fort Iron Vale wasn't a place for hesitation. It was loud, blunt, brutal. Recruits screamed through drills, instructors barked from the towers, and steel cracked the air every 5 seconds on the range. Precision mattered, but aggression came first. And in a place like that, Mara Kessler didn't belong. At least that's what they told her. You're too quiet, Kessler. This isn't a place for technicians. We train killers, not calculators. The words were final, delivered by a senior officer with a hard face and a folder in hand. She didn't argue. She didn't flinch. She just took the dismissal papers, folded them once, and slid them into her breast pocket. No one expected her to respond, and she didn't. But it was the silence that unnerved them. Not defiance, not fear, just acceptance, like someone who had seen worse, much worse. In the barracks, the other candidates let out the tension with sharp jokes. A few chuckled behind her back. One of them, a loud-mouthed sergeant in training named Brennick, dropped his boots beside her cot and said with a smirk, "Guess the whisper finally got cut." "Told you she'd fold like paper once they saw she couldn't hit past 400. Mara didn't respond. She never did. She just continued folding her gear with mechanical precision. Even her socks were rolled like sniper barrel covers. She reached under the bed, not for her issued weapon, that had already been turned in, but for something wrapped in oilcloth, tucked behind an unused ration crate. A rifle, not standard issue, not recent, old, customized, blackened steel with a wooden stock aged by war and weather. The serial number had been filed off, but the grooves on the bolt were polished from years of fieldwork. She unwrapped it like a memory. She didn't shoulder it, not yet. Instead, she sat on her bunk, checking the bolt, brushing dust from the scope, and running a cloth along the suppressor. Every movement slow, deliberate, practiced. This wasn't nostalgia. It was ritual. Outside, the fort was winding down. Candidates ran late drills. Instructors cleared out paperwork. The sun dipped behind the hills in a wash of golden iron. And somewhere in the wind, a bell rang faintly from the observation post over Range 9. She walked toward it, not to the exit gate, not toward the admin office, but straight down the concrete path that led to the farthest edge of the complex, a range no one else dared use after dark. The wind had changed, cross-drifting between berms. No one could make clean shots in that. She took her position at the farthest bench. No spotter, no gear, just the rifle and a single magazine. Inside the main building, Chief Instructor Halverson was halfway through her discharge paperwork when he was interrupted. "Sir," a corporal called from down the hall, "you might want to check Range 9. "Is she still here?" "Not just here, she's shooting." "With what?" "Not our gear." By the time Halverson arrived, Mara had already fired 3 rounds. The targets were placed at impossible distance, 1,000 meters through unstable wind, with warped terrain and late afternoon glare. No candidate had hit them cleanly in weeks. She stood slowly as Halverson approached. She didn't salute. She simply held the rifle out to him. Barrel down, bolt locked open. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he snapped. She said nothing. Instead, she stepped aside and let him inspect the weapon. The chief took it, still fuming, until his eyes caught a detail just beneath the scope mount. 6 etched tally marks, thin, deliberate lines, scored into the receiver with a blade. One of them crossed out, and below that, a line of block text worn by time. Directive Typhon, Target S-13 neutralized 0620 HRS. He froze, because that wasn't just any kill record. That was a mission name. Typhon wasn't in the Academy logs. It wasn't part of any known operation. But Halverson had heard of it, whispered in black tier briefings at Fort Jericho years ago. A covert mission that ended in sudden silence in a redacted report, one that was supposedly handled by drone. But here it was, etched in steel, on her rifle, a name tied to a mission that never officially existed. The colonel stood there, his mouth opening then closing. He didn't know what to say. And Mara? She just looked at him, calm, unblinking. "This rifle doesn't talk, sir," she said softly. "It's just a tool." Within minutes, an encrypted call had been placed. 15 minutes later, a black SUV rolled onto the range. A man stepped out, not in uniform, but his presence said everything. Two plainclothes operatives followed. The man didn't introduce himself. He just looked at Halverson and nodded once. "I see you've met our whisper." The SUV barely stopped moving before the door opened. A man in civilian dress stepped out. Tall, silver-haired, posture too controlled for a diplomat. No insignia, no rank on his coat, just presence. The kind that made senior officers stand straighter. He walked directly toward Chief Instructor Halverson without a word, scanning the firing line with a glance. His expression didn't shift when he saw Mara standing quietly beside her weapon, hands behind her back, eyes downrange. "Chief," he said, "I'm Colonel Dorian Cass, Strategic Oversight Command." Halverson stiffened. "Colonel, no one informed us of—" "You weren't supposed to be informed," Cass cut in. "This wasn't on your radar. It was never meant to be." He turned to Mara and gave a nod that looked like habit, or perhaps respect. "Pack your gear, Kessler. We'll brief inside." She didn't answer, just complied. In 3 motions, clean and precise, the rifle disappeared back into its case like a magician's act. Halverson didn't dare ask more questions. Inside the debriefing room, the walls were thick concrete, no windows. Cass placed a secure tablet at the center of the table. Present were Halverson, Instructor Rowan, and 2 other senior staff with black tier clearance. Mara stood silently in the corner. Not assigned a seat, not needing one. Cass tapped the screen. A world map appeared, riddled with red markers. Dots across continents, some near cities, others buried in mountain ranges, deserts, jungles. "You think you were training her to become a sniper?" he said. "You weren't. She was already something else." Rowan leaned forward. "I don't understand. She failed the pit run. She came in last on gear drills." Cass raised a brow. "You think the Phantom Veil program trained for that?" He swiped through several redacted files. 8 years ago, Mara Kessler was pulled from conventional service after a marksmanship trial flagged her for non-linear reflex firing. That's bureaucratic code for something simple. She could shoot faster, smarter, and more intuitively than the data said she should. Rather than send her through the standard sniper pipeline, we diverted her into something else, something quieter, something not in the books. The Phantom Veil, a program without insignia, without uniforms, without return tickets. Solo operators embedded into hostile territories. Their missions didn't involve extraction, because extraction implied exposure. Phantom Veil agents were ghosts. And Mara? She wasn't just a graduate. She was one of the founding cases. She was deployed in 16 countries, Cass continued. No backup, no recognition, just long-range eliminations carried out from jungle blinds, mountaintop hideouts, backroom basements, and once, from a riverboat adrift on the Mekong. One of the instructors blinked. "Why women?" Cass looked up from the tablet. "Because in many places, women are invisible. They walk through checkpoints without suspicion. They're underestimated, ignored, discounted. That gives us something no rifle ever could. Access." He tapped again. A photo appeared. Grainy, satellite stamped. A blurred target falling forward in a desert courtyard. The origin point of the shot was outside the satellite frame, 2 miles away. "That's not a sniper shot," Rowan whispered. "That's a goddamn impossibility." Cass shook his head. "That's Mara Kessler. Hurricane operation, duskline conditions, urban thermals, 5-second window. Target was tied to 3 embassy bombings. Local forces couldn't get near. She posed as a wildlife photographer for 6 weeks. One shot, one elimination. No secondary casualties. Halverson leaned forward. Why now? Why surface her now? She's clearly burned. Mara finally spoke. Her voice was calm, controlled. But there was something behind it. Not bitterness, not ego, just weariness. 8 years is a long time to be invisible, she said. I've done my part in the field. Now I teach others how. Cass nodded slowly. HQ agrees. That's why I'm here. Effective immediately, Mara Kessler will head the formation of a new instructional unit. Codename, the Kessler Doctrine. Its purpose is simple, to build what we once built in shadows, in the open. To create a school of precision warfare that doesn't just teach marksmanship, but survivability, psychology, and the art of unseen control. Later that evening, Mara returned to the training field. The recruits were finishing up disassembly drills. She didn't interrupt, just stood at the edge of the gravel range watching. A few noticed her. Others didn't recognize her at all. Callan Rourke, one of the more arrogant candidates, muttered to a friend. That's the ghost they brought in. She got kicked out 2 days ago. She's back now, the other whispered. Different badge. Rourke scoffed. What can she possibly teach us? That night they found out. She took them into the woods at dawn. No rifles, no drills, just one assignment. Build a hide. Remain undetected for 2 hours, no movement, no fire, no comms, surveillance only. They scattered, some going high into the rocks, others tucking under tree roots or digging shallow trenches. At the 2-hour mark, Mara called them back. You're all dead, she said flatly. The recruits blinked. What? No way. We had concealment. I had eyes on the approach. She raised a hand. Yes, you had eyes, but not one of you considered what had eyes on you. She led them 50 yards uphill. There, nestled between a boulder and frost-covered brush, was her own hide. Nearly invisible, zero exposure. Completely shielded from infrared and thermal thanks to nearby rock mass. You picked your spot based on what you could see, she said. I picked mine based on what couldn't see me. Even Rourke went quiet, because in that moment they understood something unspoken. Mara Kessler wasn't there to prove anything. She was there to build ghosts. The first official day of the Kessler Doctrine didn't begin with a whistle or a bugle. It began with silence. No lineup, no shouting. Just Mara Kessler, standing alone in the cold pre-dawn light at the edge of Range 12, clipboard in hand, watching the candidates drift in with curiosity, and in some cases, arrogance. One of those cases was Callan Rourke. He was the kind of recruit Fort Ironvale usually fast-tracked. Tall, loud, confident, ex-special reconnaissance, and armed with more ego than insight. He'd already racked up commendations in endurance, scored high in simulated hostage extractions, and held the record for fastest time crawl across Kill Zone Alley. So she's our ghost teacher now? He muttered to a fellow recruit. Thought she got bounced for failing her drills. Mara heard it. She said nothing. Instead, she marked something on her clipboard. They expected her to begin with rifle work, optics calibration, maybe a demo of long-range fire. She didn't. Today, you'll build observation hides, she said without raising her voice. No weapons, no scopes, no movement. 2 hours, if I see you, you fail. Some of them laughed. One of them asked if this was a test from recon school. No, she replied. Recon teaches you how to look. I'll teach you how to disappear. Within the hour, 15 candidates were buried into the wooded perimeter north of the ridge. Some used camouflage nets. Others relied on natural foliage. A few, Rourke included, found elevated ground to give themselves full visual coverage of the approach. Mara walked through the forest without a sound. She didn't look toward them. She looked past them, through them. At exactly 120 minutes, she blew a single whistle. The recruits emerged confident. Rourke grinned. Clear sight lines. Didn't move an inch. Mara didn't respond. She gestured toward a ridge overlooking the forest. I was watching you the entire time. The group turned. High above them, tucked under a rocky outcrop shielded by deadfall and thermal deflecting slate, was a barely visible nest. with one simple tool inside, a small mirror angled downward. You chose your hide based on what you could see, she said. I chose mine based on what couldn't see me. Rourke's grin faded. In the following days, her methods only became more unconventional. She ran no weapon drills for 72 hours. Instead, she taught stillness, discipline under boredom, heartbeat management. At one point, she made every candidate sit in a blindfolded crouch for 3 hours, tracking wind shifts by sound alone. One recruit passed out from fatigue. Rourke called the exercise mind-numbing. Good, she said, because in the field, numb minds survive. Restless ones get shot. She walked past Rourke and tossed him a crumpled ration wrapper. You twitched every time the breeze changed. And the wrapper? Caught your heat trail. In a real op, you'd be dead. And the man beside you? Gone too. At night, she showed them case files, redacted clips, heat signatures, real-world failures. This man fired too early. This one trusted the wind too much. This one moved a toe. Then came her voice. Quiet, low, focused. Sometimes your job isn't to shoot. It's to survive long enough, to know when not to. On day 10, she brought out the weapons. Each candidate was given a non-standard rifle, slightly off-balanced, mismatched optics, stripped recoil padding. They groaned. No two shots will be the same, she explained, because in the real world, nothing is ever balanced. You adjust or you fail. She had them shoot at moving targets down a ravine, with shifting wind, simulated rain, and glare reflectors set to mimic urban windows. None of them hit cleanly, all but one, Mara, using an outdated scope and iron sights. She hit 3 targets in 90 seconds. You don't need perfection, she said, reloading calmly. You need control under chaos, discipline when nothing makes sense. That's what makes you a ghost. Rourke didn't mock her anymore. In fact, he started staying late, rewatching the heat signature breakdowns, practicing the crouch holds. He never apologized. Mara never asked him to. But one evening, after a particularly brutal concealment exercise, he walked up to her and quietly asked, "What was the longest you ever held a position without moving?" She paused, then answered, with the clarity of someone who didn't exaggerate. 17 days, no resupply, no radio, just me, a scope, and a door that might never open. Rourke blinked. Did the target show? No, she replied, but the one behind him did. By the end of the second week, something shifted. They no longer called her ghost with sarcasm. They started calling her instructor with respect. She never raised her voice, never demanded. She didn't have to, because Mara Kessler didn't teach how to shoot. She taught why to wait, and in that silence, discipline was born. The air at Camp Delaron bit deeper than usual that morning. Thinner, colder, alive with wind that shifted without warning. Set high in the Varkal Range, the altitude alone made even the seasoned soldiers test their breath between drills. Mara Kessler stepped off the transport with nothing but a single duffel and her rifle case slung across one shoulder. She wore no rank on her chest, no insignia on her sleeves, and no expression on her face. Waiting to greet her was Captain Elias Mercer, tall, measured, built like the kind of man who didn't need to say much to be obeyed. His eyes were observant, skeptical, but not unkind. "Sergeant Kessler," he greeted, extending a gloved hand. "Appreciate the short notice." "Not a problem," she said, shaking it. Her grip was firm, clean, no posturing. As they walked toward the range line, Mercer explained the situation. His team, 6 hardened Special Forces operators, had trained across continents. They excelled in close-quarters battle, jungle ops, hostage recovery. But here in the mountains, they were struggling. "We've been assigned Overwatch capability for a ridge entry op. Wind drift's killing us. Gusts shift every 3 minutes. Our best guy can't hit a clean shot past 130. He looked at her briefly. "I've read your file. The redacted parts, too." She raised an eyebrow. "Then you know I don't give motivational speeches." "Good. They don't listen to those anyway." The team had already begun drills when they arrived. Roaring commands, firing in sequence, checking scopes, adjusting angles. It was methodical, loud, almost proud. Mara watched silently from the edge, her eyes scanning each posture, each twitch, each moment the wind picked up and someone overcompensated. She didn't interrupt, just listened. Watched the misses? When Mercer introduced her, the reaction was subtle, but clear. A few raised eyebrows, a few exchanged glances. One, Master Sergeant Bren Rollins, the team's sniper lead, stepped forward with a polite smirk. Respectfully, Captain, we've all qualified as expert marksmen. Some of us hold sniper tabs. I'm not here to teach you what you already know, Mara said calmly. I'm here to show you what you think is impossible. No one replied. The range was a brutal one. Staggered targets from 400 to 1,700 yards, spread across a broken slope with high crosswinds and sudden thermal shears. Snow still clung to the ridgeline. The air distorted in shimmering waves as the morning sun finally crept over the rocks. Rollins went first. 130 yards was clean hit. 300 owl miss. 450, correction, hit. 600. 3 tries, still wide. Beyond that, silence. This is useless, he muttered. The gusts are breaking pattern. Mara stepped forward. She opened her case. Not regulation. Her own weapon. Custom built. The same rifle she'd fired at Fort Ironvale. Scratched steel, wood grip, optics slightly weathered. No two parts looked like they belonged together. Yet everything fit like it was born from her hands. She didn't give a speech, didn't ask for silence. She just dropped to prone, braced the rifle against a rock, and adjusted the scope. Then she closed her eyes. The others watched in puzzled stillness as she didn't fire. Not yet. She waited. 1 breath. 2. Then, crack. The shot rang out like a whisper through bone. No one saw the target move. Not at first. Not until a faint ping echoed from across the valley, and the farthest steel silhouette, 1,700 yards away, trembled and tilted backward. Silence. One of the newer operators muttered, "No way." Rollins just stared. "What the hell? How did you time the drift?" Mara stood slowly, brushing dirt from her sleeve. "I didn't time the wind," she said simply. "I listened to it." She looked out across the slope, at the broken rock, the moving tree line, the ripples in a puddle 30 feet to her left. "You're fighting the mountain," she said quietly. "I work with it." She didn't offer a breakdown, didn't chart her shot. She just walked back to her case, locked the rifle away, and waited. The rest of the day, the team's attitude changed. No more cocky glances, no more under-the-breath remarks. They began to listen. Not because they were told to, but because they finally understood why. That evening, Mercer found her alone by the barracks overlook. Snow had started to fall in soft drifts. Below them, the ridgeline glowed under a copper sunset. "You shook them," he said. She didn't look away from the horizon. "They're not bad. They're just used to believing that noise equals dominance." "You always this quiet?" She gave the faintest smile. "Only when I'm thinking about wind." They stood in silence for a moment. "How'd you really learn to shoot like that?" he asked finally. Mara exhaled slowly. 17 days, 1 hide, 1 scope, no radio. "I had to learn what the mountain was saying." He looked at her, not with curiosity anymore, but with respect. "Tomorrow we've got 2 days of elevation crawl. Think you could join us?" "I didn't come here to lecture, Captain," she said. "I came to make sure your team lives." And for the first time in his career, Elias Mercer nodded to someone, and meant it, not as a gesture, not as rank, but as a soldier, saluting the ghost beside him. The memo arrived on a secure channel, stamped with the crest of strategic oversight. Subject line, Doctrine Initiation, Kessler Method. No ceremony, no press release, just a directive, blunt and absolute. Effective immediately, Mara Kessler's training protocols were to be disseminated across allied special operations schools. Her techniques would form the backbone of a new generation of Overwatch and precision assets. Observation first, reaction last, discipline over instinct, patience over pride, and they called it by name, the Kessler Method. When Colonel Cass informed her, she didn't react, just gave a faint nod and returned to cleaning her rifle in the corner of the instructor's lounge. They want you to lead the global rollout, he added. On record, face of the doctrine. She didn't look up. I'm not a face, sir, she said. I'm a ghost who becomes a weapon. Nothing more. Cass watched her work in silence. Every motion precise, measured. He knew better than to argue. At Fort Iron Vale, the sniper division looked different now. Gone were the barked orders, the obsession with speed, the competition over who hit first. In their place, drills in concealment, pressure endurance, slow breath firing, and the long wait. There was a whiteboard in one of the side classrooms where someone had scribbled one of her lines. Sometimes your job isn't to shoot, it's to survive long enough to know when not to. No one erased it. They just started calling the corner of the range where she trained her students Whisper Lane. The story might have ended there, quietly, methodically, just like Mara preferred. But the mission never quite lets people like her stay idle. The call came on a Sunday, encrypted, short, from a classified unit out of Norway. A recon team embedded in an Arctic corridor had gone dark. 6 members. Last known transmission. Movement detected near a covert uplink tower. Command needed a field consultant. Not a leader, not a commander. A ghost. They sent Mara in under civilian designation. No uniform, no insignia. Just her rifle, her thermals, and the kind of silence that made people step aside. The team was pinned down in a frozen blind, overwhelmed by an untagged hostile unit that had learned to jam satellite feeds and track standard approach paths. Standard protocol would have required a full support deployment, but she didn't wait. She moved under the radar, one ridge, then another, then a hollowed-out bluff above the comm tower. From that perch, she could see it all. Movement patterns, infrared pings, even the flash of a barrel where it shouldn't have been. She didn't breathe until she saw the moment to act. 1 shot, then 2, then 4 in rapid sequence. By the time the Overwatch drone regained connection, the threats were gone. And the team? Still alive. Not because they called for help, but because someone was already listening. Back at Fort Iron Vale, they never debriefed her. Not officially. She just returned 2 days later, placed a single entry into her log, and hung her coat back on the same peg. The cadets noticed. One of them whispered, "She was gone, then back, like nothing happened." Another replied, "Maybe that's the point." The next week she gave a lecture, not about tactics, not about scope calibration, but about doubt. "Your enemy isn't always a man with a rifle," she told them. "Sometimes it's the voice in your own head, the one that tells you to rush, to guess, to flinch. You tame that voice, or you never take the right shot." Her class didn't move, didn't even blink, because when Mara spoke, she didn't just instruct, she revealed. Later that evening, Callan Rourke, now her top trainee, caught her at the edge of the range. "Ma'am," he asked softly, "what's next for you?" Mara looked out toward the ridgeline, where the sun dipped low behind layered clouds. She held her rifle loosely at her side, not like a weapon, but like a companion that had seen too much. She didn't answer right away. Then, with a rare flicker of a smile, real but fleeting, she replied, "That's classified." And she walked into the wind. Sometimes the strongest voice in the room is the one that says nothing at all. Mara Kessler never shouted. She never demanded attention. And yet, in silence, she reshaped how elite soldiers are trained. Not through ego, but through discipline. Not through brute force, but through presence. Her story reminds us of something we often forget in today's noisy world. That power doesn't always come wrapped in applause. Sometimes it walks quietly, holds its breath, and waits until the moment matters. In a culture where everyone's expected to be louder, faster, more visible, Mara's legacy whispers something different. That restraint is not weakness, that patience is not passivity, and that sometimes your greatest impact is the one no one sees coming. In the everyday lives we live, in offices, families, even online, these lessons echo louder than gunfire. Do we act with purpose or just react with urgency? Do we wait for the right moment or jump because we're afraid of missing one? Do we judge someone because they don't look the part or wait long enough to see what they actually carry. Maybe we all know a Mara, someone quiet, overlooked, written off, until the moment they step forward and change everything. So here's our question to you. Who in your life reminds you of Mara Kessler? Someone who leads without demanding. Someone who listens more than they speak. Someone whose strength isn't seen until it's needed most. Let us know in the comments below. And more importantly, tell us what you took from this story. Was it the way she refused to prove herself to those who didn't matter? Or the way she never let bitterness overwrite duty? Or maybe it was that final line. That's classified, a reminder that some things don't need to be explained, only earned. To everyone watching, especially those of you who've lived long enough to know what real silence costs, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. And thank you for remembering that not all heroes wear medals. Some carry the weight of quiet missions and never ask for recognition. If this story resonated with you, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe for more real and untold stories, and share it with someone who still believes in quiet strength. Until next time, stay steady, stay patient, and trust your training.